Welcome to the Million Pound Mission Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Shively, the PhD, the previously heavy dude, and I'm on a 1 million pound mission. Now, I've personally lost over 100 pounds, and I've applied what I've learned from my own transformation journey to help my hometown clients lose over 35,000 pounds in just 5 years. Now I'm on a mission to produce over 1 million pounds of results by delivering my best weekly tips, motivation, inspirational stories, and transformation strategies so that you can gain clarity about what you need to do to reach your goals and give you the confidence to take action. The perfect time to start taking action is right now. So let's do this. This episode is sponsored by you, my friends. I want to be able to keep cranking out 3 high-quality episodes each week, and I need your support to make that happen. Now, you can help support the show by becoming one of my Patreon patrons. Now, by pledging $1 a month, that's 8 cents an episode, and I'm going to earn it, by gosh. It's going to make a huge difference for both me and the show. If you pledge over $6 a month, you're going to get access to my Million Pound Mission live page where I do live follow-along workouts, live mobility sessions, live Q&A sessions, and even a few live podcast episodes. And all of your Patreon support dollars go directly towards paying for my new podcast production team. And they are the people that are helping me produce 3 high-quality episodes every week. Now, we need to raise around $500 a month to pay for those services. And you can check my Patreon page to see where our current monthly donation total is at. So it's all out there in the open. And it's kind of cool that you can see that build up. Now, currently, we're only at about $30 a month. So I do need your help. I'm going in the hole every single month, and I can't keep doing that. So if you can support the show, I'm going to earn that $1, all right? And to get more info on how you can support the show, just go to millionpoundmission.com, millionpoundmission.com, and click on the Support the Mission link at the top of the page. Your support is so important to me, and I'm very grateful, my friends. Thank you. Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the Million Pound Mission Podcast. It's your buddy, Adam, the PhD, the previously heavy dude. How's it going out there in podcast land? This is episode number 129, Feast Without Fear, with my friend, Jen Stevens. Now, this week I'm delivering another great interview that I know you guys are really going to connect with, all right? Jen and I talk about intermittent fasting, human longevity, and so much more. Now, for those of you that don't know Jen, she is the co-host of the Intermittent Fasting Podcast. We had her co-host, Melanie Avalon, on the show a few weeks ago, and you guys love that episode, so I know you're going to love this one too. Jen is also the author of 2 really, really awesome books. The first book is called Delay, Don't Deny, and the second book is called Feast Without Fear. I've got links to both of those in the blog and the show notes with this episode. Now, I want you to check this one out as Jen and I discuss how she personally lost 80 pounds with intermittent fasting. We talk about finding the nutritional protocol that best fits your body and your lifestyle, super important. We talk about why autophagy is so important to human longevity and health. We talk about the common links between people that are living the longest, and she really just delivers so much more. This is a jam-packed episode. You may even want to listen to it twice. We get into a lot. We dive deep, and Jen really delivers. So without further ado, my friends, here we go. Episode number 129, Feast Without Fear with Jen Stevens. All right, Jen, welcome to the Million Pound Mission Podcast. How you doing today, my friend?
I am doing great, and I love the title of your podcast, and I love your mission. What a great mission to have.
Well, I appreciate that. And I always tell everybody that's on the show that now you're a part of it. So when somebody listens to this, if they take one little nugget of advice that you delivered and they get better results from it and they lose 20 pounds or 5 pounds or whatever, they go on the website and donate that weight to the Million Pounds. We're tracking it, and that'll be because of you. So get fired up about that. Yeah, it's really cool.
Well, I am.
It's really
very
cool.
Exciting.
So speaking of getting fired up, you have a great transformation story. I've seen your before and after pictures. You've done some amazing things with your own health. And I'd love to kind of introduce you to my audience through your story. So if you wouldn't mind, let's go through that first.
Okay, I'm glad to share it. I am a 48-year-old mom of 2. So I'm just a normal person. I don't have a medical background. I'm an elementary teacher, though I'm retiring this year after 28 years of teaching. But, I have this similar diet history probably to a lot of 48-year-old women. I counted calories here and there. I had different diets that I would go back to here and there. But as I got older, suddenly I just packed on the weight. There was like a 18-month period. I was going through some stresses and different things in my life, and I put on 50 pounds in a year and a half, and nothing that I had tried before was working. Of course, I have my suspicions now about why that is so, but I just kept getting bigger and bigger. And around 2009, I learned about something called intermittent fasting, and I immediately knew this was going to be my answer, but I couldn't get my mind in the right place to commit to it. So from 2009 to 2014, I would try it, and then I still had like a deprivation mindset, and then I would try some other diet that promised, quick weight loss. And then I would try intermittent fasting again, and then I would try something else, so I was like a diet jumper from thing to thing. Finally, in 2014, I went on a cruise with my family, and I looked at the photos, and I could not believe that was me. I had stopped weighing for a while. I think I was in denial about what was happening. And I came home from that cruise, pulled out my scale, got on the scale, and I was 210 pounds. And I'm 5'5". So, I was obese. And that's a hard word to say,
Yeah.
obese.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, this is it. So I knew that I was not going to let this continue. So finally, I'd still tried a few things along the way, but I never started going up in weight again. And I settled on, by the end of 2014, I was sold on intermittent fasting. And I kept tweaking it all throughout probably the next couple years, 2014, 2015, 2016. Then in 2016, I found the style that worked for me. There's a lot of different types of intermittent fasting out there, so you can experiment with them and see what works for you. But by 2016, I knew what worked for me, and I've continued to live that lifestyle ever since 2016. Now, I did lose the weight from 2014 to 2015. I lost 75 pounds initially, got down to my goal of 135, and then just continued with the intermittent fasting lifestyle. And I've lost at least another 10 pounds since then, I would say. I don't weigh anymore, so I'm not really sure. But I've had to continue going down in jean sizes even throughout maintenance. But I officially declared myself in maintenance when I hit 135 in 2015. And it's been wonderful. Intermittent fasting gives you a type of effortless maintenance that other diet plans don't. I've continued, like I said, to lose more weight over maintenance without trying. And that's the beauty of intermittent fasting. So now I'm, bebopping around at the age of 48, at the smallest weight I've maintained in my adult lifestyle. And I don't feel like I'm dieting. I eat what I would like to eat every single day, to satiety within my eating window. And it's really just a type of freedom I couldn't have imagined when I was that 210 pound woman who felt so awful and like I was trapped in that obese body.
So you said a few things there that I took note of. One of them was the word maintenance, because I know so many people, that's just like a unicorn that's out there. It's like Sasquatch of the dieting world. Like, they've heard of it, but they don't know it actually exists. There's been sightings of maintenance. Like, I don't know if I can actually, I don't know if I can actually hit that. So many people just dream of getting to that point where they're like, okay, I'm done losing weight. How did you make that mental shift? Because I know a lot of people actually struggle with that. Once they do they lose 100 pounds, they lose 50 pounds, they hit their goal weight, and then they're like, okay, now what do I focus on? What do I do? So how did you feel when you hit that maintenance zone? How was it to tell yourself that, okay, I did it, now it's switch modes? And then how did you switch modes and, you stopped weighing, and it seems like you took a lot of pressure off yourself and still maintained and started to see other benefits. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay. For the first year, 2015 to 2016, when I was, quote, in maintenance, I still didn't quite understand that intermittent fasting was a lifestyle that you don't go on and off of. I still was trying to tweak it to find the way that I could, like work it, to eat normally, quote, like other people and not have to do it. But the longer I have lived this lifestyle, the more I've realized I like the way I feel this way so much better. I like the way I feel when I have, the eating window that I prefer. And so the shift from this is a diet, this is a temporary thing that I'm doing, to this is my lifestyle, this is how I feel healthiest and most vibrant, that's what had to happen. It was really an emotional, mental type journey. I was physically where I wanted to be, the size I wanted to be, but I still wasn't done. Now I feel just totally like this is what I do. And, I never want to go back to an old way of eating. It's not like I long for the days when I could eat all day long or whatever. I don't want to anymore. So the point of it was I had to keep changing my mindset as I went to how do I feel the best? What's going to keep me feeling the best long term? And so the thing about intermittent fasting is it gets easier and easier the longer you do it. It becomes more of just what you do. And you don't have to struggle with, what do I eat? What do I not eat? Because you get back in tune with what's naturally in your body, your satiety cues, your signals that you've got. We've got hormones that tell us, hey, you've had enough to eat. But we've lost touch with those in the modern era, especially if we've been dieters for a long time. We rely on external cues like how many calories did I eat, or what time is it, or what is this portion size, or what are my macros. So I don't track any of that anymore. I just eat, then I'm like, okay, my body said I've had enough. So then I stop. Or, hey, I'm still a little hungry, so I'm going to eat some more. I did a lot of reading about intuitive eating during those years that I was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it seemed like something that made so much sense, but I didn't have those signals, the stop eating signals that people talk about in the intuitive eating community. And it wasn't until intermittent fasting that I finally reconnected with them. And I'm like, oh, now I understand. So I'm really an intuitive eater within a intermittent fasting window.
That's interesting. And window, what does that look like? Because I know there are different windows of intermittent fasting. What does your eating and fasting window look like on a daily basis?
And I'm just going to say that if I could go back in time and tell myself, the 2014 self that I was going to be eating this way, I would be like, no, that's crazy. That sounds horrible. That sounds like a lifetime of torture, but it really is just so effortless. So I don't eat during the day. I'd stick to what we call clean fast approved beverages. I drink black coffee. I drink water and sparkling water until sometime in the late afternoon, early evening at what time I open my eating window. So many days I'll have a snack around 4 or 5 or something like that. It just depends on what I'm doing, if I'm hungry, my schedule for that day. Then a couple hours later, I'll make dinner. And then my husband and I always sit down to a dinner together. That's one thing about intermittent fasting. Mealtime is more sacred and precious now. We sit down together and we eat, and it needs to be something really good, something nutritious, something that's going to satisfy my body's nutritional needs, but also make me feel happy that I've eaten it. The food has to be delicious. And then after dinner, I may have a glass of wine, and then a little later have some ice cream or a piece of chocolate or whatever. There's nothing that's really off limits. So I eat one actual meal a day, and might have a snack to start, dessert later. If I'm on vacation, I'll open my window up wider. We went to the beach. This past week was spring break, so I spent 4 days at the beach. And 2 of those 4 days, I actually had an earlier meal. Like one day I had lunch and then dinner, and then the next day I had brunch and then dinner. But even then, I ate intuitively within that time period, and I stopped eating when I'd had enough. And then the following day, the last day of the trip, my husband's like, would you like to get some lunch? And I'm like, no, I'm just not hungry. So it felt better to get back to my regular schedule. So it's not like, a prison sentence that you have to, highly structure. You just take it day by day and live your life. Yeah.
I see so many. I'm a believer like you are in finding the right nutritional strategy that fits your body, your health, your lifestyle. And we'll get into that with your new book a lot here in a second. But I feel like so many people kind of jump ship, like you were talking about earlier in your experimental phases, trying different things and quitting. I feel like so many people don't let themselves go through the process of seeing if this actually will work, and you have obviously found something that, you described, if you had told yourself you'd be eating this way a couple of years ago, you'd be like, this is crazy. But now after vacation, you're like, I need to get back to eating that way because it feels normal to me. That's such a shift.
It feels better.
Awesome.
Yeah. I no longer have to white knuckle it and make myself do it. And my first book, Delay, Don't Deny, Living an Intermittent Fasting Lifestyle, kind of tells my journey and also explains how to figure out what intermittent fasting lifestyle would work best for you. There are a lot of different approaches. The daily eating window approach is the one that feels best to me, but there are approaches where you have like an up day, down day approach. People may have heard of 5-2 or alternate daily fasting, where you like one day, it's just you alternate days of how you approach the fasting. So there are different eating window lengths. Some people do well with an 8-hour eating window. Some people like a 2-hour eating window. Some people like one plate and done, and sometimes you just vary it from day to day. So the beauty of this lifestyle is it is very, very personalizable. Is that a word? You make it suit yourself. Yeah, it is now. There you go. So there's no one right way to do it. So sometimes, like just today, someone was sending me a message and they're like, tell me exactly what you eat. And I said, nope, I'm not going to do that, because you have to figure out what feels right to you. Some people do well with a snack and then a meal. Some people do well with a small meal, then another small meal. And it's just figuring out what works for you. But I would recommend anyone who's not familiar with intermittent fasting to start with Delay, Don't Deny, read that first, and then really think about it, and then start experimenting. And don't expect this is not a plan. I don't have on the cover, drop 10 pounds in 2 weeks. That's not going to happen.
Right.
You might gain some weight at first. And that's the scariest part, because you're changing what you're doing and you're like, wait a minute, I've gained 2 pounds. But eventually, once you get past the adaptation period, your body learns how to burn fat during the fast. Your body gets into the groove. And then people find they really start to shrink. They lose a whole lot of inches, maybe even before they start to lose actual pounds on the scale. This is like nothing you've ever done before. One time I called it the George Costanza of dieting plans, because it's the opposite. When he decided to do the opposite of everything he'd done before, this is kind of like that. It's the opposite of everything you've done before. It actually starts to work better and better the longer you do it. Instead of like most diets that get harder and harder and worse, this gets easier and easier. And people even find they start to drop weight faster the longer they've been doing it.
That's awesome.
So it gets off to a slow start, and then it just gets better and better.
Yeah, and that momentum is everything. As anybody that's lost weight, momentum is the key. And if we get it going in the right direction, we just try to keep it going in the right direction. So any tool, like I view nutrition plans as tools, and we got to use the right tool for the job. And I was really psyched to dive into some of the information with your new book. Yeah. And you talk a lot about some different nutritional strategies and how we have to find the right fit for our body, our lifestyle, our health. So how do we go about doing that? What are some good starting tips or first few steps that we can take to find the right fit for our body?
Yeah, that's a great question. My second book is called Feast Without Fear, and it really exemplifies the way I want people to approach food, because my husband doesn't get it. He's never been a dieter. He's always been lean his whole life. One time we went on a cruise and he came back and he's like, oh, I've gained a little weight. So he starts, intermittent fasting with me a little bit, and was back down to his normal belt size in, 5 days. So he doesn't get it. But anybody who's been in the diet world, we are afraid of, carbs. So I'm afraid of carbs, or I'm afraid of fat. And it seems like no matter what diet book you read, there's something in there you're supposed to be afraid of. There's one diet book and you read that, you're now afraid of beans, and now you're afraid of grains, and now you're afraid of everything, right? So you can make yourself crazy. So why are there, so many different diet approaches out there that are diametrically opposed to one another? Like there's one diet book called Protein Power. And it talks about how you should eat, high protein, mostly protein. You will feel great and lose a lot of weight eating protein. Then there's one called Proteinaholic that says, don't eat so much protein. Protein is killing us. Both of them are written by doctors. Both of them have a ton of medical stuff in there. They have studies that support their 180 approach. So do we eat a lot of protein? Do we not eat protein? Is the protein the best? Is protein killing us? And that's just one example. I could substitute any word for protein and give you an example like that. So I actually played a game with my husband in the car. We were going on a trip. And I'm like, all right, name any food, and I will name a diet book or plan that tells you not to eat that. I mean, there's even
true.
water, because now people are, anyway, long story there. But I really wanted to figure out, why? How could all these doctors write these books that all have links to science, and yet they say the exact opposite thing? So I started digging in to different types of research, and I really wanted to figure out what is the actual best. Obviously they can't all be the best, right? Who's lying? Who's wrong? Who's misinterpreted the science? The more I started digging in, the more I realized nobody's lying. No one's misinterpreted the science. There's just, first of all, I talk about the fact that the scientific studies have a lot of flaws and why. So that's one whole chapter in the book, the problem with science in general and how we take these studies in isolation, that sort of thing. But I also learned that our bodies really do not respond all the same to food. So like your friend who did the keto diet and immediately started to feel great, felt better than they'd ever felt in their life, started dropping weight, loves it, wants to live this way forever. Your friend is not wrong. That is a great plan for that person. And then your friend over here who tried keto, felt terrible, felt awful, never felt worse, felt run down. That person also, wasn't lying. That's true. Their body was not adapted to that type of eating. Our bodies are all different. It has to do with, of course, genetic factors. That's very important. I had my DNA analyzed through one of those companies and got the raw data and looked into that. And found, for example, my body is well suited to dairy, but a lot of people have genetic profiles that mean their body doesn't work very well with dairy. Right. So when people say, I can't eat dairy, well, I believe them because it doesn't work well for them. It works fine for me. Also our gut microbiomes. My research led me to that approach or to that avenue of exploration. And it's really fascinating. The more you read about the gut microbiome, the more you understand how much is out of our conscious control that goes on within our bodies. We can only control what we put into our mouths. But when we put it into our mouths, it does a lot of different things depending on, of course, your genetics, but also what your gut microbiome setup is, also what hormones you have going around throughout your body. If you're insulin resistant, you're going to have different responses to foods than someone who isn't. So we all have such vastly different gut microbiomes, and it will basically affect everything from mood to how your body gains weight or loses weight. It's fascinating. The more I learned, the more I was like, wow. We didn't know all this until really the past 10 years or so, because at one time, the scientists just knew, what's in there? It's poop and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then they started to be able to sequence the different things that are living in there, and they realized, wait, this is, there's all these different types of gut bacteria, and the people who have this certain health profile tend to have this certain type versus, the people who are unhealthy have this other certain type. So, of course, I also had my gut microbiome analyzed, and that was fascinating.
Yeah. So another thing that I found that was really fascinating, I mean, I can tell you just went down the rabbit hole on all this research because your book and the lineup just looks amazing. Autophagy. All right.
Right.
This is a word that's coming up a lot, and people are hearing this a lot in podcasts. So, I haven't dove into that specific topic yet on my show. So I would love for you as an expert to kind of explain what that means and why it's important for us.
Okay. This word was not one anyone had really ever heard, unless you were a research scientist, which I am not, as I said, until the 2016 Nobel Prize in Medicine was awarded to a researcher who studies autophagy. And so suddenly the world was like, oh, well, what is this? This is exciting. And basically autophagy is a process that is going on. It's not really something that you only get when you're fasting, right? People tend to think that, you either have it going on or you don't have it going on. It's something that goes on in the background of your body naturally. But fasting stimulates the process and causes an increase in it. So what is it? Why do we want it? Well, autophagy is like our bodies, to put it in a simple way, it's like our body's recycling system. We've got all these old junky things sitting around, all these old cells junk sitting around. Think about your attic, think about your basement. You shove stuff away. You don't have time to fool with it. Imagine that you're super busy. Like most of us are, you're living your life, stuff comes into your life. You don't have time to deal with it. You cram it away where you can't see it. You don't have any time to deal with it. Well, that's what happens normally. You might take a minute and deal with some of it, but you don't have time to really dig in and clean it out. When you're fasting, though, it's like a break. Instead of digesting food, your body has time to work on some other processes that need to go on. So it's like when you have vacation and you're like, okay, I have time to clean out the basement now. So you go in there and you have time to deal with it. So autophagy is like your body's process of getting in there, seeing what's around. You might decide to upcycle some of these parts, right? Make something new out of something old. So when you're fasting, your body is able to better focus on the process of autophagy and get rid of some of that junky stuff. I have links in Feast Without Fear that lead to all this research. And if you go to the website for that book, www.feastwithoutfear.com, I have links to every single book link is right there on a page called Book Links. And there's a link there to a paper on autophagy that really talks about, the research behind it and what it will do for us and some of the things. It's anti-inflammatory, it's anti-tumor, anti-cancer, so many good things happen.
Yeah, it's definitely a hot topic, and I'm excited that you're introducing this to my audience. I know it's something that we're very concerned with longevity, and we're a lot of us, first we get excited about losing weight and feeling better and looking better, but then we start thinking like, okay, I want to be around for a long time. I want to be healthy and available and have a high quality of life for the people that I want to spend time with for a lot of years. And you dive into longevity, and I'm really interested in blue zones.
Oh, yeah.
And the research that you did there with, maybe you could just explain what a blue zone is and how longevity ties into what you talk about in your book.
Well, this is more fascinating research. The blue zones are 5 areas that have been specifically identified around the world as like longevity hotspots. These are places where people tend to live the longest, and they also are healthy. And researchers, I think National Geographic sent out some groups to do some research. Dan Buttner is one of the guys he's written some books about it, but I think that's how you say his name. If I said it wrong, I'm sorry. Sorry, Dan. Anyway, they've gone to these different locations to really study the people and get in there with them and see what do they eat, how do they live. And it's more than just what they eat. Of course, a healthy lifestyle has to do with, are you relaxed? Do you have family around you? Do you take time to play and have fun? But they also examined what do these people eat. And one of them is in Italy. There's one in Greece. There's one in Okinawa, Japan. We've got South America hotspot. And then also, believe it or not, Loma Linda, California is one of the blue zones as well.
Nice.
USA. And so they're like, yay. So they're like, well, what? And it's a religious community that lives there. The Adventists live there. So what do these people all have in common? Well, of course, that in they're not eating the same foods in Japan as they're eating in Loma Linda and as they're eating in Italy. Of course, it's not exactly the same. They don't have the same foods growing in their ground, right? But they found that they eat a very similar profile of foods. They eat heavy on the vegetables, lots and lots of vegetables at every meal. They also don't eat a ton of meat. All these different groups have in common that they don't eat excess meat. It's not like the mainstay of their diet, but they do eat meat. They don't avoid any specific food groups, but they're just eating, the way their ancestors have always eaten. Lots of vegetables. They get whole grains. They get lots of fiber. Interestingly, as I started to do this research into the blue zones, I was also reading about the gut microbiome and reading what the gut microbiome researchers recommended. And it was like exactly the same thing.
Wow. That's interesting.
So it is interesting. So everything the gut microbiome research, I said, let me say that again. Everything the gut microbiome researchers eat and say we should eat are exactly the same foods that they're eating in the blue zones and then living for such a long time. So I'm like, well, that seems to be pretty good info to have.
Yeah.
So if we just plan something that'll feel good to us, based around these foods, then you really can't go wrong. Now, that being said, a lot of us have not been eating in a healthy way, maybe decades, right? We've been eating the standard American diet, a lot of processed foods, a lot of fast food. That really messes up your gut microbiome, causes lots and lots of problems. So you may have an unhealthy gut microbiome, and so you try to eat a lot of whole grains and they don't do well for you, maybe right now. You might have to heal your gut first. You may have to build up your gut microbiome to be able to handle these. If you don't do well with a lot of fiber or with beans, you've just got the wrong guys living in your gut. But you can repopulate your gut over time.
So let's talk about that then. That's
okay.
Probably the question that's popping up in the audience. How do we do this? So what are the steps that we can take? Because I've heard, again, like anything in health, nutrition, and fitness, there are a million different opinions. Like you hear that, things like taking, acidophilus and things like that are great. And you hear like, oh, that's worthless because it's not the right strain or whatever. So through your research, what have you discovered as far as healthy steps to populating that gut microbiome in the correct way?
Well, there's tons of books out there that are focused on this specifically right now. So you can do some reading about that. I just basically touch on it in Feast Without Fear to give you the awareness of this. And then you can dig in deeper to see what you would like to do. But I prefer to focus on real foods instead of like a bunch of supplements. Like I don't take any prebiotics or probiotics. Instead, I just eat real food. Prebiotics, let me go back to probiotics. We've all heard of probiotics. Those are the things that contain the live bacteria that you eat, and then they're supposed to go down there and populate your gut. Prebiotics are actually foods that feed the gut microbiome well. I actually read a book called Prebiotics, Not Probiotics that was written by, I guess a gastroenterologist is what he does. But he talked about how, think about it like a garden. Your gut is your garden. And if you are wanting to really grow a good garden, you need to fertilize it well. So the key is the prebiotics, getting in the food, and then you feed the good gut bacteria, and they will start to take over and repopulate. So I really just focus on prebiotic foods, and y'all can Google them and find them there. You can see how to add this. It's easy. Things like onions and garlic and, beans, things like that have a lot of prebiotic properties. Resistant starch is great. Add those things to your diet. Look for foods that are going to do it. You can buy prebiotic supplements as well. But I just, like I said, prefer to do it with food. Also eat fermented food. Those are things that people have been eating, for generations and generations. And those are great for your gut microbiome. Now, I do want to give you this caveat. If you're starting from a place where your gut microbiome is unhealthy, like so many people, and you start like throwing in all these prebiotics, you may have like World War III down in your gut, and you'll be like, oh my God, what's happening?
Yeah.
We had one lady in one of our Facebook support groups that, she'd been doing intermittent fasting for a long time, and we were all talking about prebiotics. So she got this prebiotic fiber and started taking it as a supplement. Well, about a month later, she's like, y'all, something's not working in my intermittent fasting lifestyle anymore. I've suddenly put on 10 pounds and I don't know why. And, we talked her through it, and she connected it to the fact that she had started taking this prebiotic, and she was very bloated and a lot was going on. Well, she didn't give up. She kept doing it, kept going with it, and eventually it worked itself out. And then those pounds just dropped right off again. But when you're changing your gut, there are going to be some things that go on that might not feel right. You might gain weight, and you're like, well, this is not working, when really actually it's part of the healing process. Yeah. But be aware that you may feel worse before you feel better.
Yeah, there's the transition that's going to happen there.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And so, as World War III is going on down there, it's not going to be it might not be pleasant. But the processed foods that are so much a part of the American diet these days actually feed the bad gut bacteria, the ones linked to the bad health outcomes. So the closer you can get what you're eating to real foods, the better your gut health is going to be. And then I think that translates to good health everywhere, because I just really learned that healthy gut is a healthy body, and an unhealthy gut is going to be an unhealthy body. it's way more important than we knew 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah. I think with all the research that you've done, and I know a lot of my audience members are going to want to read your book. I think the key with like the blue zones and everything is to look for the macro common denominators. Like people want to find like, oh, the people in Japan are eating the purple sweet potato. That's the key. Right. But it may just be these people in the blue zones are eating whole food. They are they are meditating. They are going for walks. They're physically active. You know, the macro things. They live a less stress-free lifestyle. And in your opinion, do you think? I tend to think that it's just as much about what they aren't doing as much, in addition to what they are doing. So they may not smoke. They may not be stressful. So there's a lot of things in there. So what role do you think that plays into it? Like what they aren't doing, that they aren't eating processed food, you know, things like that. Do you feel like that impacts the blue zones as well?
I think so. And, you know, these people that are living these long, healthy lives in these blue zones, they're not counting calories. They're not tweaking their macros. They're not, I mean, if you go over there and say, how's your carb content? They'd be like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. Pass the potatoes, you know? Yeah. They just eat the way their ancestors ate. And also, here's one other thing, that I didn't mention before, especially in, some of these more religious communities, fasting is a part of their religion. So, they may have also been having periods of fasting throughout the year. They don't eat as much as, you know, the typical American is now eating. I did some interesting comparison of, you can look at like reported calorie content of what people are eating in different eras and different countries. And it's very, very fascinating, but they are actually eating less food than we do. You know, the Japanese, have a strategy that they eat till they're 80% full. Harahachibu. I'm not sure if I said that right either.
It sounds right. It sounds
right. Well, sorry if it's wrong, everybody. But the idea from that is eat till you're 80% full. So, you know, we're so used to thinking about, you know, these big meals and eat a lot and supersize it, and really eat real food. Don't eat as much, and stop when you've had enough. Yeah. That's really the key.
Simple.
And you can make yourself crazy trying to, you know, decide on the perfect diet. I've stopped reading diet books that tell you what to eat and what not to eat, because I believe that I know what I feel great when I eat. Like, I don't feel great if I eat a whole bunch of bacon, for example. Right. If I made a pizza that was topped with like prosciutto, which is of course a type of bacon, and vegetables, and it was all, you know, homemade pizza, and it was, but after I ate it, I started to, you know, it was very heavy in my stomach. I don't do well with that fatty, greasy meat. I do fine with other meats though. So over time, you really figure out, especially I think when you're living an intermittent fasting lifestyle, you become so in tune to your body, and you're like, ooh, you know, I had that chocolate chip cookie to open my window, and then I felt really terrible and like crashed. And you're like, oh, I probably shouldn't do that. You learn it. Instead of like, I can't eat a cookie, I'm like, well, I'll eat a cookie later after my meal instead of opening my window with it. You really learn to focus on how you feel. And I think that's what is the key to doing something long term. Yeah,
that's super interesting. And I love the overarching theme that you're bringing up of long-term thinking and lifestyle. Right. And one of the things that I love to focus on, whether it's on the podcast or with the clients that I'm coaching up, is the danger zone, the transformation traps that tend to, I describe it like a black hole where people start a new program, they get excited about it, they get some initial results, and then life happens and they go back to where they started. It's just a process of going around and around and around. So what danger zones have you personally overcome, or are there any that you still are like, this kind of stresses me out and I might fall victim to stress eating, or is there anything out there that you're, you know, we all have things that trip us up, right? So what have you overcome, or what still kind of lingers for you, if there's anything out there?
You know, this is very interesting, but I'm really like, I think I've broken free of all of that crazy diet. Now, I mean, I'm trying to think of something. The fact that I just went on that vacation last week, and it was like truly effortless. and I didn't have to stress or think or worry. And even the last day when we were getting ready to get in the car, my husband's like, you want to go to the pancake house? I'm like, well, if you want, I'll just drink coffee. And I no longer look longingly at what someone else is eating and that I can't, quote, can't have that. I'm choosing not to have it because of the way I'll feel later.
That's awesome.
And there's no more, I totally could. I could have whatever I want at any time. I just think, do I want to? How will I feel later? And I always am now making choices based on how I will feel later. Sometimes it's okay. The day that I chose to have brunch, I knew I'd be a little more tired the rest of the day. And that was all right. We were going to be lying on the beach. So I was like, I'm going to lie on the beach and drink Prosecco. So that's actually what I did.
Nice.
It was nice. Yeah. And, but that was also a choice. There's no more guilt. It's all just making a choice, understanding how I'm going to feel later if I make this choice. And then I'm either this is going to work or it isn't. And like I said, it's taken me a long time to get here to this point, but it is absolutely amazing to know that I've conquered this in my life.
Yeah, I think that's a trait that I see in a lot of people that have had long-term successful transformations, that they are now making well thought out choices in whether, they choose to have the drink or eat the cookie or not. But they're thinking through it. It's not a snap, craving cave-in situation.
Yeah.
It's thought out. And you, like you said, you understand how that's going to impact you. And then you make the choice and you live with it, and you're not going to beat yourself up about it, and you move forward. But your baseline is your game plan that you tend to follow, the intermittent fasting protocol and the healthy living lifestyle that you've established as the new normal. You found that balance, and that's something that, it's a great place to be. So congratulations for that.
I do want to say one more thing. I think that the people who don't struggle with their weight just always have done this, the people who are like, ooh, I forgot to eat. And you're like, what? What's wrong? I now am one of those people. Oh, it's 6 p.m. and I haven't opened my window yet because I'm so busy, I might say one day. And that actually happened yesterday. I was like, darn it, it's 6 p.m. I have to go cook dinner now and I'm in the middle of something. So I really do think my always slim husband would always say something like, I don't want to go eat at Waffle House because I don't feel well when I eat it. And I would look at him like he's crazy. I'm like, but it's delicious. But now I get it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean. And people that have always lived this way have always felt like this. And we have to just reconnect with that, which I think that intermittent fasting has helped me do.
Yeah. 100%. That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, we've dropped quite a bit of bite-sized knowledge nuggets here. I know my audience is going to want to dive deeper because I sure am. And I know you've got an awesome podcast. I'm a subscriber to the Intermittent Fasting Podcast.
Oh, good.
You and Melanie just rock. And I love the dynamic between you two. Well thought out, well researched. I love it. So that's highly recommended. But how can people best connect with you, follow you, dive deeper with your books, and just follow along with your story?
All right. Well, if you go to www.JenStevens.com, and it's Jen like gin rummy or gin and tonic. And then Stevens is with a PH. So JenStevens.com. That's my website. My story is there, links to my books. Also, feastwithoutfear.com has the links that I talked about, the scientific links that you can go to really just to read all sorts of different things if you love science like I do. And then, listen to the Intermittent Fasting Podcast. You can go to www.ifpodcast.com and find us there. We've just crossed over the 1 year mark, so we've been recording that for a year now, and that's exciting. I have a couple of intermittent fasting Facebook support groups. I would recommend Delay, Don't Deny intermittent fasting support as the place to start. The other one is tailored to 1 meal a day, which I don't recommend starting with that. You don't want to just start off, I'm going to fast for 23 hours every day. No, you need to ease yourself in. So start with Delay, Don't Deny. The book is available on Amazon in paperback form or barnesandnoble.com paperback form. You can also get it, either of my books that way, but either of them are also available on any ebook platform that you like. Anywhere you get your ebooks, you can find Delay, Don't Deny and Feast Without Fear there. So
cool. And I'll link those up. I'll link up your website, your podcast, and both your books, the direct links in the show notes and in the blog for this episode. So one last thing that I want to cover before I let you go. I want to be respectful of your time. But first, I just want to say thank you because you've done so much research, and I can tell the passion behind the research. Like, you're genuinely interested in this topic, and it has impacted you in a huge way. And now you're spreading that and impacting thousands of other people. So I think that's just so awesome. And I appreciate that. It's the more tools we have, the better. And the more information that we have, the better. So people that are like you, that are doing the work, that are digging deep and bringing all that information to the forefront for all of us to consume, I think that's super awesome. So that being said, we've covered a lot of interesting things: the gut microbiome, the intermittent fasting, the blue zones. Somebody may be listening and thinking, okay, I'm ready to start along this path. What's the first, one or two steps? Like, what would you recommend to just getting started along some of the things that you've recommended here today?
Well, I think the number one thing, and this is might not be what you're expecting me to say is the number one step, but I think this is the key that I wish I could go back and tell myself. Stop looking for answers outside of yourself and trust the way you feel and your body. And maybe stop listening to so many experts and trying to do what they say to do, and instead figure out, what's my body telling me? How do I feel? Does this make me feel better? Does this make me feel worse? Go for the things that make you feel better and follow the path that way, because your path to wellness is not going to look exactly like mine. And what makes you feel great is not going to make me feel great. If someone lived exactly the way I do, ate exactly what I eat, they might feel terrible depending on their body. So it might be exactly wrong for them. So trust your wisdom. Read about intermittent fasting. You could read it in my books, of course, or all over the place, but learn to trust yourself more than people who are not you, and how you feel.
That's awesome. Outstanding advice there, Jen. So everybody, we've dropped a lot of knowledge on you here today. All right. And we tried to simplify it as much as possible there at the end. I think that's a great first step. So the key is, as always, I don't want this to just be entertainment. All right. I want you to be entertained by our conversation here between me and Jen, but also I want you to take action. So just pick out one thing and do take an action in that direction in the next 24 hours. Start the momentum. Momentum is precious. And that, my friends, is how we get out there. We own it every meal, every workout, every day. I will see you on the next episode. Hey, I've got one quick question before you take off, everybody. Are you ready to donate some weight loss to the Million Pound Mission? I thought so. So I've got a quick 2-step process to make that happen, my friends. First, just head on over to the millionpoundmission.com website, millionpoundmission.com, and grab a free copy of my #1 tool, the Transformation Battle Plan Workbook. Now, this will help you set up your battle plan for the next 28 days of your transformation process. Now, once you complete your 28 days, then come back to the website, millionpoundmission.com, and donate your weight loss and contribute to our Million Pound Mission. So let's do this.